maybe less than we would like to. But it's interesting because we have this idea of like what we think we're supposed to talk about, what we think we're supposed to learn, and sometimes what just arises spontaneously might be even more interesting than we can anticipate. So, without further ado, if you guys would each just start with a little bit of introduction about who you are, what you do, so people know the framework or wheelhouse you're gotten in. And then if you want to pitch to the crowd, if you want to ask for a question, if you guys have something you want to hear, like, let's let this be an organic interaction. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
Game on. Woo.
All right. Yeah. My name is Lorenzo Gomez, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Lorenzo. Sam's the only one I got. Thanks for coming to Startup Week, guys. Appreciate it. So I'm Lorenzo, and I work for Geekdom, and I also work for the 80/20 Foundation. And I'm a former 10-year recovering Rackspace, or a Racker. And I worked at Rackspace for 10 years. But I started when I was 20, and when I left, I was 30. So I'm a college dropout, so Rackspace really was my undergrad and my master's and everything, and I drank too much and all that stuff. All that happened within my Rackspace window. And now we're down here in the urban core of San Antonio trying to really kickstart a tech scene and an ecosystem, which all of you are contributing to by just being here, and I'm super excited about it. And part of that is really cool because I get to work with really visionaries like Pat. And I think what's cool about Pat is, so I'm a total fake for being up here. Pat has actually built a company from scratch, got it acquired, right? I run a co-working space, which is really I'm just a landlord who fills up soda machines, right? And so it's a different flavor of the tech scene, but I think there's a lot of good stuff we can talk about specifically around kind of where San Antonio is going and the type of people here. I grew up here, Pat's not from here, so he brings a really fresh perspective that I think a lot of you guys, actually, show of hands if you're not from San Antonio. Huge portion. So I think that this really kind of goes to your evolution. But that's what I do for a living. So if you want to find me, you'll bump me into Geekdom. I'm there all week, every week. So, and then Geekdom staff here, shout out to Christian, Leroy, and Michael. They make that place run. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Appreciate the words. So my name is Pat Matthews. Like Lorenzo said, I'm not from San Antonio, but I do call San Antonio home now. I'm actually from Virginia, so born and raised in Northern Virginia. I ended up going to school down in Southwest Virginia, Virginia Tech. I was also a college dropout, although I did end up going back to get a degree after a while. Ended up dropping out though in 1999 to start a little .com. Didn't realize it would take 3.5 years to get our .com off the ground, so during that time, also ended up going back to school and getting a degree like I talked about. From 2002 to 2007, we had iterated our .com into a real software company. And so we grew that company up. We got it to about 60 employees and $10 million in revenue, and we sold it to Rackspace in September of 2007. I then joined Rackspace for 6 years. Had a number of really awesome roles there, and it was just through an epic growth period for Rackspace. And I think during that time frame, went from 300 million to $1.5 billion in revenue, so just unbelievable growth experience in many ways. I left Rackspace about 2.5 years ago. It's amazing to say that, time flies. And for the last 2 years, I have, actually if you back up 5 or 6 years, while I was at Rackspace, I also started becoming a very active angel investor, so taking money that I made selling my company and pumping it right back into startup world. And since I left Rackspace, I started putting both my time and money into startups. And that's been incredibly rewarding. It's been a lot of fun. It's brought me all over the country. And now I'm sort of getting back to focus again. I recently took a role with a startup company downtown San Antonio called FileStack. I still consider it a startup, but it's about a 4-year-old company. A group of us relocated the company from San Francisco and Las Vegas to San Antonio about 6 months ago. About 2 months ago, I took over as the CEO of the business. So having a lot of fun again. It's definitely different. I mean, being an operator is definitely different than doing the whole investing and advising thing. But it's a lot of fun. So happy to talk about whatever you guys want. Like she said, we don't even know what we're supposed to be talking about here today, so I think more than anything, whatever's on your
The
mind.
young lady in the red.
So anyways, that's what's up.
I have a question.
Sure.
To kick it off.
Yes.
If you guys both, in a sort of very Zen fashion, would like close your eyes and think, what is the thing I most want to know about this person I'm sitting next to right now? Like, what is really, like, what's most interesting, or what do you want to know about Lorenzo that maybe you don't? And Lorenzo, what do you want to know about, you probably already thought that at the start of this question, but what do you want to know about each other? If you could ask each other, and so you can have a second to think about that, because that's like...
I'll go first.
Okay, you got it, go.
Okay, so I'll start this off by saying I love San Antonio. I think it's a great city. Got a lot of growth years ahead.
Here it comes.
Here it comes. Here it comes. But you know, personally, I am more business driven, and I happen to be in San Antonio, and I'm excited about that. And like I said, I call this place home. One of the things I've learned about Lorenzo, and we know each other fairly well, but actually we're not like, I mean, we don't know each other backwards and forwards. I think one of the things I'm probably most curious about is this guy that seems to pretty much dedicate his life to building San Antonio. And there, I think every emerging city needs people like Lorenzo. So I guess I'm curious, why?
First off, there's a James Avery bracelet with his name on it, so we can officially be BFF. So it's actually a good question. So I think about it a lot. So when I look at the mission, so Graham Weston, the chairman, he's basically our owner of Keepdom and 80/20. He has a really great, I guess it's like an individual mission statement for everybody in their work, and it says everybody wants to be a valued member on a winning team on an inspiring mission. And when you leave a job, it's because one of those three variables is broken. You don't feel like a winner anymore, you don't feel valued, and you don't feel like you're on a mission. And so for me, Rackspace, one of the things they did a good job of is Rackspace's mission was never about going public. It was never about making three guys rich. It was always about being one of the world's greatest service companies, and that's really what I signed on for. But to answer Pat's question specifically, I really shouldn't be in tech. And it's the reason I'm so passionate about it is that I grew up in the inner city. I didn't know what a bagel was until I was in high school. And I was like, what's this thing that looks like a donut that's not a donut? And the second plane ride I'd ever been on in my life was at Rackspace. And they put me on a plane to London. And I didn't know how security worked. I didn't know how a security checkpoint worked. I didn't have a passport. I didn't know what a passport was. And so for me, Rackspace changed my life because I had no college degree. I had no credentials, I had no qualifications to work. I didn't even know what managed hosting was, to be honest. So I started out, so I grew up in San Antonio, I went to Health Careers. My best friend at Health Careers and I worked at Downtown Baptist, and while we were at the hospital, we were like, man, we hate this. Let's never work in the medical field, so we do that. And I got a job at HEB, and I was in the produce department. And so I can still tell you that Chiquita bananas, the produce code is 4011, but that the Dole bananas are 4237, right? And so like I always thought that I was going to be in produce for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with HEB. HEB is a great company. And my best friend called me one day and said, hey dude, I'm working at this cool company called Gateway Computers, and you need to come work here, and it's awesome, and it pays $850, and I know you only make $825, and I was like, whoa, that's big cash, bro. And I said, look, I don't know anything about computers, that's a really stupid idea, right, I'm not gonna do that. And my best friend basically for 2 weeks harassed me and said, this is bullshit, you're better than this, you need to come work. And so he convinced me to quit my job. And so I was a receptionist at Gateway. Raise your hand if you remember Gateway, the old cow spotted boxes. So I was a receptionist, I was the dude that would get you on a list to talk to a sales rep. So like the Apple Store now, they have it on an actual iPad. I had a clipboard and a pen. And so that was my job. And then I met a guy there, who has a company at Geekdom now named James Brent, who's from Gateway Corporate. And he left and called me one day and he said, hey dude, I'm at this really crazy company called Rackspace. It's downtown, it's super small. It'll probably go out of business. It's probably not gonna last, but they buy us food every week, whatever you want to eat. It's awesome. And you should come work here. And I said, wow, they buy you food every week. That's pretty amazing. And the reason James recommended me for this was because as the receptionist, one time I cleaned up a kid's vomit, and I didn't remember the story, but someone had vomited and I went to clean it up. And Rackspace is built on fanatical support. And he said, hey, you had fanatical support because you didn't blink twice and you cleaned up this kid's vomit. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And so I went to Cincinnati, I didn't know what it was. But to answer your question, to me, Rackspace changed my life. I traveled the world because of Rackspace. You know, I lived in Europe. I lived in London for 3 years because of Rackspace. I now know what the internet does, even though my mom still doesn't know what I did at Rackspace. And 14 years later, I just said, look, Mom, I work for the internet. And just tell everybody in Laredo I work for the internet. And so, to me, Rackspace changed my life. And so whenever one of the companies in our ecosystem hires their first employee, I'm always very misty-eyed thinking, I hope that's the next Lorenzo. And when CodeUp gives someone who didn't have technical background a skill and they get a job, I hope that that's the next Lorenzo, because there's really no reason why I should be here. And so I've always suffered with kind of imposter syndrome. And that's really why I've dedicated my life, because I think to me, I go, it's worth it because it really changed my world. So that's a long-winded question.
And it just happens to be that Rackspace is in San Antonio. Is that the connection?
It just happened, yeah.
Is it brand? Like, what is it?
Well, I think it's, you know, Rackspace being in San Antonio changed me, but I feel like there are other people that grew up in San Antonio that said the normal academic path is not for us. And I feel like San Antonio's there's kind of this underlying infrastructure there where it's, you know, I feel like the narrative in my neighborhood was certainly never go to college and get a job. It was just get a job. The narrative was actually never start a company. That's probably one of the most risky things. And so I feel like Rackspace introduced me to all these new things that we're able to change. Because my network is now, my San Antonio network is so drastically changed because of it. And also I feel like the mission was sincere. I feel like it wasn't bullshit. I feel like they weren't saying, let's start this great company, but in the end I knew their reasons were sinister.
So am I allowed to ask another question?
Yeah.
You can ask anything you want, that's it.
So if San Antonio gets to where you think it can be, say in 10 years from a tech ecosystem perspective, do you want to help it get further, or do you want to go help build Detroit or another underdog city? Like, I'm just trying to understand what's your real passion? Is it San Antonio, or is it city building? Is it?
So I think my passion is building San Antonio. I think my career path would be, I believe that there is going to be a new industry forming, and it's going to be the industry of city building. And so I think that it has not emerged. And so I think that any one of you guys that engage in building the city